This special visit ended with a humbling honor.
This Chancellor Award for Excellence and Lifetime Achievement with our greatest appreciation and recognition of your exceptional contributions to journalism and dedication to excellence.
So there's Harris Faulkner receiving an award, and we were tipped off about this award, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to congratulate her as well as we bring her back onto the Annie Frey Show. Author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Faith Still Moves Mountains, and of course you know her as the anchor and host of the Faulkner Focus and Outnumbered on Fox News. Harris Faulkner, welcome back to the show, and congratulations.
Hi, Annie. Thank you so very much. I feel so blessed to get this, first of all, just to be with you, and also to get the recognition for my journalism. It really is a blessing.
I was watching the show that day when you were on campus and you were talking about the band and just everything that was about this university, Southern University, and the experience there. Can you tell us a little bit about this award and what your experience was receiving it from Southern University?
You know what? First of all, I had no idea the history of Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And they didn't know anything about my personal history with regard to the college. So I'm not an alumna from there. I didn't go to school there. But my parents met and fell in love at a historically black college and university, HBCU, in Texas, Prairie View. And Southern University and A&M College is one of those original 107 land-grant HBCUs. And so we were kind of learning about one another, and it was really, for me, a very beautiful time, because one of the things that they showcase for me, and when I tell you that they know how to celebrate something, they don't just present you with an award. There's a marching band that's, the Human Jukebox performed for Fox at the opening of the Super Bowl in New Orleans a couple of months ago. And so I'm being, for the first time, among all these people and kind of being introduced to life on Southern. But the other thing that they're really known for is the ROTC military program on campus. So they organized a town hall for me to host with cadets and midshipmen.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, this was like a dream come true so that I could get to know their ROTC program. When my dad met my mom, and they were just young little ones on campus at Prairie View, that HBCU, he was at ROTC. He was in that program. And he became one of those storied flag officers on that campus. And Southern University has graduated ROTC members in training for our U.S. military branches who've gone on to be 10 generals.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and that's not to mention all of the other flag or ranked officers. But that just lets you know they've been the backbone of American leadership in our U.S. military for decades. They would have to have been.
Well, I thought you shined such a great light while you were broadcasting from there on what that university does, and we wanted to make sure that we congratulated you on your award it's the Chancellor's Award for Excellence and Lifetime Achievement for your contributions to journalism and community engagement. I'm going to play a little bit and segue here with the community engagement part of it, because while we were watching the Trump administration make good on trying to shrink government, trying to claw back waste, fraud, and abuse, there's a personal side to these cuts. And I have myself in my community, and just yesterday at the Y, I was there to work out with my trainer, and right before we started, two people who knew me from the radio show came up, and they both work in government. They were both worried about the potential shutdown that might occur on Friday if they can't get the CR through. So they're worried about the furlough, but they were telling me about the people in their own office. These are real people who have accepted the early buyout, one who they think is going to be let go. And I'm sitting here as somebody who supports what Donald Trump is doing, what Elon Musk is doing, but I'm also wondering what you think about the reality of these cuts to actual humans who have been working really hard to do their job and might see a fate of their own soon.
Oh, it's definitely part of the conversation. And if you're hearing from people and you have a personal connection, I certainly do, having been the daughter of a military veteran who did 2 tours as a combat pilot in Vietnam. I mean, necessarily, my dad was a government worker because he was a warrior. So I have always watched Veterans Affairs. I immediately wanted to start to interview some of these secretaries from departments that I was and agencies that I was hearing from people on. So that was a natural one. I started hearing from, people who'd retired from the military right away saying, if they're going to cut the VA, what is that going to look like? So a week ago, I had on the brand new Secretary, D.O.G.E, who had been on my program many times previously. He's a retired veteran himself, Iraq and Afghanistan. And what was amazing, so he was a congressman from Georgia at that point. Now he's our U.S. Secretary of Veterans Affairs. What was amazing is that he already knew all of what I was going to ask about and had all of those personal stories too, because he's a military veteran. And he said, look, we have ballooned this agency to over 400,000 people. But the accountability on one single issue, he said, I can't get my mind around how hard it's been to track down. Why can't we get benefits to our retired warriors faster? And he said, when I started to take a look at what was going on there were a tremendous amount of dollars and effort, resources being spent. But on the other end, our veterans weren't being taken care of with the very basic need of benefits. And he said, how much choice should there be if you're not close to a VA? I mean, should you be able to go, like school of choice? Should you have doctor of choice if it's going to take you an hour to get someplace and you've suffered life-debilitating injuries fighting for this country? How should the military react to your needs? And he said, what it really needs is a forensic. It does need an audit, which is what the Department of Government Efficiency is doing, DOGE with Elon Musk, senior advisor to the president. But he said what it also needs is just to take a look at, do we need this many people doing this many things? And how many of them are working out of the purview of anyone who is tasked with the very basic needs of our veterans? And so that's what he's working on now. And what he says is, you can make cuts with a scalpel, but it's difficult to make cuts with a sledgehammer or a chainsaw without understanding what people need. Mm-hmm. And so everyone, I think, is taking a good hard look at what this process looks like. And look, on paper, things can start out one way. The true measurement, for me at least, Annie, of good leadership, of great leadership, is to take a look at things and go, okay, but on the flip side, what's the human element of this?
Yeah.
I think we are at that stage, and I think over-communication is needed. If President Trump and those he's tasked with DOGE think that they are over-communicating by giving us the details of how they're doing what they're doing and who that impacts and why and all the things, you can't give us too many details. Over-communicate to us as a public so we understand.
Yes, that's so important. So that, because this shouldn't come to a surprise as anybody is watching the campaign and what Donald Trump was going to do, and Elon Musk very famously jumping around on the stage because he was going to bring DOGE to the American government to make it more efficient. People did vote for this. That's really the end of the day, the important part of it. But the over-communication, to your point, is necessary because the human element here certainly is coming to a head more publicly now than it has in the past.
Well, I think that, and I also think the speed of which all of this is going, I understand. Now, remember, with all of these human elements, all of these legitimate concerns about what happens if I lose my job because I'm a government worker in that agency, look at the Department of Education. 50% of the workforce either laid off, let go, retiring today, post the announcement that was made recently. So if we're going to look at all of that, well, then what are governors going to do? What are senators and congresspeople going to do? Because let's take West Virginia, for example, had on the senior senator from that state, Jim Justice. Do you know what he told me? Mm-hmm. He said, Harris, it's up to us. It's always been about the states. He said, so if there's a government program that pulls out and West Virginians are getting the message that they will be out of work, and he said, and that's not an if, it's actually happening. He said, do you know how much untapped energy we have because the Biden administration and Obama and some others on the left who have risen to commander-in-chief have consistently said coal is horrible, coal deserves no transition point in our economy? He said, we can become players again in energy and in so many different areas in West Virginia. He said, there will be and are jobs right now to be part of that conversation. And that helps lower the inflation with cheaper energy. Look, it's all hands on deck. Trump has said that from the beginning. You know who doesn't like this more than anybody? Democrats. That's why they're fighting so hard. So my big question is, well, what do they have to hide? How have they really been spending?
Yeah. And the information, the forensic audit, as you were referring to there, is so important because that's the transparency that the American people deserve. It's their government. It's funded by them.
It's our money.
Yeah. One last question before we let you go. We're speaking with Harris Faulkner right now. Very honored to be able to do that this afternoon. I'm thinking about Donald Trump as a man, as a politician, and you've had many personal and you've conversations with him. You've interviewed him for us to be able to pick his brain a little bit. But what he's doing right now and what he's laid out in his campaign, this is, as I said, very honest. This is what he said he was going to do, and now he's doing it. This is difficult. This is tough because Americans are being affected by this in a negative way. There are negative stories out there for the media that hates him to spin, to try to push him down. But in order to get us away from approaching $37 trillion in debt, we have to do something drastically different.
Yeah.
Can you speak from a personal understanding of Donald Trump, the resolve and the foresight that this man has and the long-term planning ability that he has to see us through to the end where it does result in a positive outcome for Americans?
This is such an important question because what you're talking about is vision and value. You're talking about measuring the value of the journey that we're in right now and looking at his vision and seeing how we get there. July 13th, 2024, it was about 4 hours before the president left it was 4 hours before he was shot in Butler, Pennsylvania. We were at Mar-a-Lago. He had not flown out yet. We had a sit-down interview. To this day, he says it's his longest next to Joe Rogan. So we sat, we talked, and his vision was this. When I become president, and back then, Kamala Harris hadn't even been announced yet. They were going after Joe. So he said, when I become president, if I do, he said, I want to make sure that everybody is heard, all those people who haven't been heard. But he said, what I want to do is reach across the aisle and clean up some of what is not clean right now. He spoke specifically about cities like New York with just horrible crime rates. And his number one focus would be to right-size America financially around the world, economically around the world, because that makes us less vulnerable to problems. He said, I'm a bigger person at the table. I'm paraphrasing him. I'm a bigger person at the table if our house is in order.
Yeah.
So that's important. But this idea of bringing people together left and right, he scooped up a whole lot of people who probably thought they'd never vote for a Donald Trump. And they were people of color. They were people from every ilk in this country. He grew the party in ways that the Republican Party has said that it always wanted to grow, but didn't necessarily have the proper outreach to go do that. So he's held up by lawfare in New York City. He goes to Harlem. Toward the end, he's making fries at McDonald's and doing things that young people, those are sometimes their opening jobs on their resumes, not always, but sometimes. And he's taking a look at those communities, not by accident, but on purpose. Now, Kamala Harris was handing him a gift toward the end by, some misstatements by Biden, calling Trump supporters garbage. I don't know if that was a misstatement. That's what the White House said on his behalf. But all of the like, he took those opportunities and spoke directly to the American people. So what I think he's doing, based on the conversations and interviews that I've had with him, is keeping his promises. And on July 13th, his number one promise, yes, it's a slogan, make America great again, but also pull into the fold people that you don't anticipate. Does anybody think RFK Jr. is anything but a Democrat?
Yeah.
He's not. He's a Democrat. He's a Kennedy. Come on. Hello. Now, his family can feel any kind of certain way about, families are families. Tulsi Gabbard, does anybody think that she wasn't a multi-term Democrat congresswoman for the state of Hawaii? No, nobody thinks that. She found her way to a party that she thought she was more aligned with politically, the Republicans. She says the Democrats left her. But her entire political history, elected history, was as a Democrat. Who's in his cabinet? Have you ever seen that before?
Yeah.
Multiple Democrats?
Yeah, you wouldn't see
He
that from
meant
the
it,
other
and
side.
he's keeping those promises. And I just say, on the 51st day since inauguration, and I'm a big Toy Story series fan. My kids have always loved it growing up.
Yeah.
Let them cook.
You use phrases. I have a 15-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter, and you use phrases on your show regularly. And I'm like, I know the kids you're around because I speak that same language, and it always makes me
my
chuckle.
gosh. So my girls are keeping me. I mean, they're keeping me on my toes. Annie, you know how it is when kids hold you accountable, and they think. You know what I love? They actually think, and maybe this is a gift from social media, because social media is you're scrolling and you're taking in all these messages. And if you can just even understand for a moment the power we still have as parents, when we look them in the eye and they look up at us, that's God working through us to reach our kids. Yeah. They don't have to scroll to get us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I say to my girls, I'm right here. What do you got? Take on every topic, take on every difficulty, every victory, everything that you can with them, because the world would rather we not be present. And I'm telling you, if you just show up and you don't need a battery recharge like a phone, you have power in their lives.
Amen. Amen to all of that. And if you don't do it, the world's waiting to do it for you. You're exactly right.
Amen. And we cannot have that.
No, absolutely not. Harris Faulkner, always a pleasure to speak with you. Congratulations on your award and acknowledgement. We love having you here. We hope you'll come back soon.
I love you back. I celebrate you every day, Annie. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon. Harris Faulkner, author of #1 New York Times bestseller, Faith Still Moves Mountains. I've read it. It's wonderful. You should read it. Anecdotes of different stories that she's covered or been made aware of, or people she's interviewed, and these individuals move to faith in this time of despair or anxiety or fretting, and she tells a story about how it moves mountains, and you should check it out.